Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
In Season 2, we explored Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Mist and Fury.
In our postseason content, we look forward to sharing listener feedback we received, as well as interviews with some exciting guests. You can also expect to hear some special listener-requested content.
The views expressed by the hosts and guests are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, self-harm, and depression will recur throughout the podcast. Listener discretion is advised. On this week's episode, we are discussing writing tips, specifically in response to questions we received from some of our listeners.
And just to add a little bit of credibility to us, Amy and I have to. Who are we to give advice, right?
No, that's fair.
We have some. Amy and I both have a bachelor's in creative writing. It was a pretty intensive program. I went on and did my master's in comparative literature.
And I did my master's in education.
And we are both writing our own novels, our own series. Although Amy's has hers written. You're in the revision, but still. We're both doing it.
We're both doing it. That's what matters.
Yeah, so we have something to us. So please let us put our debt to your benefit. All right, first, where do I start? That was it. That was the question. Where do I start? Which is a great question.
It is, especially, so we received this question several times, and this can apply to individuals who've never written before but want to start, and this can apply to people who haven't written in a long time.
Yeah.
It's going to be different for everyone, just first and foremost. And I can say my experience has changed over the years. Mm-hmm. I used to imagine scenarios between characters, and I would just write a scene in my notebook and then try to build around that. But that's not necessarily how I do it now.
How do you do it now?
I'm thinking. I don't know. Inspiration strikes in the most odd ways. I recently wrote a short story because I was going through some of my old memory boxes and realized or remembered that I'd stolen something from every boy I've ever had a crush on.
Oh, I remember this short story.
And I was in the car driving to work and I was like, what would it take for someone like me to escalate and go too far?
What would it take for me to commit murder? I can't remember if that's what actually happened in your story, but it got intense.
She steals some appendages from the person.
It was a great story.
It was. I still love that story. Maybe at some point I should publish it. But
put it for our trophy wives.
I could.
Yeah.
But it just started as a question. And then I started drafting the first paragraph in my head. And then I was like, you know what? I have to make this a story.
There's something comforting about short stories.
There is.
You know, it's a burst. Like, it's there. I feel this question so very much because I and Amy can attest to this, I come up with a lot of really good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
You have to admit, I have some really great creative ideas that I just don't start. That I'm like a little creative wheelhouse. And, you know, sometimes you need an Amy to partner with.
I was going to say, you're the idea person. I'm the execution person.
You're the executioner, you kill.
No, like as in
but
carry out.
I mean, there is something to be said about like if you have a good writing partner to just ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy and I have a creative project. We're going to pitch it here. You know, you guys put some momentum, connect us to the right people. But there's a rock opera that we wrote, and it's using all of the songs from Muse's album Absolution. And it's a great story. And that's one where I told Amy, I have an idea. And Amy said, we're writing this. So,
and you had the idea when you were 14.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just an idea that I had forever. And then there's other moments where I finally, how do I drag my ass to do something? Sometimes I make a playlist and I just keep listening to the playlist until I have to write something. But honestly, I think having a soundboard helps a lot. Because even though Amy's not working on my book with me, it does not stop me from saying, Amy, help me with my magic system.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like you and I do great going back and forth with ideas that I'm able to just ask you questions and bounce a little bit. And even if you're not writing it, it gives a spark. So if you're able to find someone that you can just say, hey, I have this idea. What about this? Like, what is this? What does that look like? Mm-hmm. It helps so much.
And let's say you're in a situation where you don't have that. I always recommend, or it's always been recommended to me that, and I wish I did this more when I was younger, keep a notebook where you write the ideas as they come. Yeah. You don't have to work on them. Just write the ideas of like, oh, this would be interesting to put in a story. Mm-hmm. Or this is something that happened. I want to save that for later.
Yeah.
And just collect ideas. And then one day, go through all of them and see what sticks. When I was revising my novel, I wrote scenes on index cards and started shuffling them around.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot.
You know, everybody's process is different. And it really just depends are you trying to write a novel? Are you okay with writing a short story?
Are you okay just writing a novel and then going back and fixing things too? You know, because that could be, sometimes you just need to sit down and just get it out.
Right.
And then you say, okay, I'm going to go back and figure that out later. But, you know, that comes with its own consequences.
Yeah, which I'm experiencing right now. My first draft of my novel was just, I don't care how many plot holes are here. I'm just going to write. And
there's an acceptance that as much as you try to plan and pre-plan, it's never going to be done. Sometimes you just have to just start writing.
Yep, that's right. Our next question comes from a follower that asked for advice for a 14-year-old who wants to be an author.
Oh my God. Do we have 14-year-old listeners?
I hope. I mean, I'm honored, but gosh, we have filthy mouths for a 14-year-old.
I am so sorry. Maybe this is someone who has like a 14-year-old sister that or brother they're trying to get info for. But maybe. If you're 14, if you're underage listening to this, at least we're teaching you what to want.
Yeah.
Okay, advice for a 14-year-old. I love this question because you're a young mind and you're a mind that you're in such a great, amazing place. And that place is school. And you have so many topics that are being forced down your throat, math, history, and everything. But you are in this creative pool that you can have inspiration happening at any given moment. It can be in science class. It can be in math class. It can be in history class. There can be any moment in the day that you just observe it and think, that's a story right there. There's so much inspiration happening that you don't get once you have a 9 to 5 and you just sit at your desk all day long.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I'm trying to remember what it was like writing back when I was 14. Mm-hmm. And I remember reading a lot and writing fanfic based on whatever I was reading. So I read a Buffy the Vampire Slayer novel and I wrote a fanfic based on that. I read a lot of Harry Potter. I wrote a lot of Harry Potter fanfic when I was a teenager and in high school. I think also one thing I used to do, I would just be in a moment and I would say, how would I write about this? How would I write about the sunshine that's coming in through the window? Mm-hmm. And I would just write that. And it wasn't necessarily about a story, but trying to find my voice and how I expressed myself. And I think that's important to develop young. Because we all have very unique voices and just write about what you know. Write about what it's like to ride on the school bus every day.
Yeah, there's something so refreshing thinking that you're so young and there's no expectations of whether what you're writing is good or bad or if it's going to get published or not, right? Like, you're young, you can write whatever you want to write, and no one's sitting there saying, hey, 14-year-old, how come this isn't Charles Dickens? No, I'm not saying that you're not talented, and, it doesn't mean that suddenly you turn 30 and you're good, but you just can step outside of your mind and your own worries, and also just say, you're young. You haven't experienced the world like other people, and because of that, you shouldn't limit your own mind.
I agree. I think one other suggestion I would give to both our first and second questioners, I don't know.
Questioneers.
is, and this isn't true for everybody, but I find that my imagination is more excitable when I'm writing pen to paper than when I'm typing on a computer. So don't be afraid to write in different formats, in different locations, and find what works for you.
Oh, I recently discovered that if I put headphones on, not earphones, but like the headphones that we used to edit, but don't listen to anything.
Oh, interesting.
I really love writing like that.
Helps you focus?
Yeah, there's something oddly comforting about my head being gently squeezed and it blocks out the noise.
Fair.
I'm getting a head hug and an ear block. It's great.
If it works for you, it works.
All right, the next one. All the scenes in my head that inspire my writing are character-driven, and they give me a clear vision of characters and the world. But how do I create or work in some bigger plot line beyond these interpersonal relationships for fantasy writing?
That is such a great question.
It really is.
And this really speaks to who I was in my 20s versus now. I was very much the same way. I have so many notebooks full of scenes that occur between two characters that may never end up in the actual book, but it helped me learn who those characters were. And I think what's important and what's been the hardest thing for me to learn about writing is you can't be married to anything you put down.
Yeah.
Because kill your darlings is a very popular phrase in writing that you can't always keep what you love that you've written. So write these character interpersonal relationships and get to know your characters first. I think that's a beautiful idea, but know that it may not end up in a larger piece of work.
Yeah.
And what that does is it helps you find their motivations. It helps you find their voice so that when you start to think about plot, your plot can be reliant on their actions rather than on whatever story you think should be told.
I feel this question to my very bones. A lot of my ideas come from songs that I listen to, and then all of a sudden a story plays in my mind. And Amy, you saw that in action that one time with Taylor Swift's Ivy. Yeah. We listened to it in 3 minutes, the song ends, and I just look at you. I'm like, here's an idea.
Yeah.
I think your words were, stop it, you have enough.
You have enough story ideas.
Enough story ideas. Write it and move along. But I watched a TikTok one time, and it made a really good point. It's okay to have a book that's character-driven and not plot-driven.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is doesn't mean that you don't have a plot. It doesn't mean that, that's not what's important. It's just that the characters are the main function of your story. Same thing could be said about world building. Sometimes people's world building is the most important thing that's happening and not necessarily the plot or the characters. Right? You don't have to do all of those at once.
Yeah.
If you have various scenes with these amazing characters, tell that story. You don't have to come up with this large overarching plot that's so elaborate and has to have multiple, jump scares and things coming out of nowhere and oh my God, I wasn't planning for this. That doesn't have to be the meat and potatoes of it. It's okay to have your characters be the main feast.
I mean, look at Thorns and Roses. It is very character driven. There isn't a lot of plot until the last 25%.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
And the last 25% only works because there's been so much work done on the characters.
I would even argue that same for Mist and Fury.
Absolutely.
And maybe the only one that's different is Wings and Ruin, which is why you and I are kind of having a
hard time analyzing it.
Because it's hard to analyze plot as much as it is to analyze characters.
Yeah. And my novel, I love my characters. I love my characters because I know them. And the plot is secondary. I do want an interesting plot, but what's more important to me is the character growth and the character journey. And that's okay.
Yeah, same. I love my peeps. They're great. I want them to have their moments. They'll get there when they get there.
Yeah. And if you write a bunch of character scenes and, interactions,
the plot will get there because you have to ask, how do I get to that point?
Right. How do I get from this scene to that scene? And then you'll come up with a plot.
I was just telling Amy earlier today that I was working on my book, and there's something fun about as you're typing and you're writing, and it doesn't matter if you've mapped the chapter out, mapped the book out, all of a sudden you start writing. And for me, the best way I describe it is that my character's telling me what's happened.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden, oh my God, I didn't know that. What? That's a surprise to me too. And you just start writing and let it surprise you.
Yeah. I never believed that when I was younger, that the characters tell you, right? Because for me, it was always very rigid. Well, I have a plot and this is what's going to happen. But definitely in writing my novel, I would have an idea for how the chapter would go. And then all of a sudden, the characters are doing something completely different. And I'm like, well, I guess this is what's happening now.
Yeah. Let your characters decide.
Yeah. Because that's when it becomes believable.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question is, how do you write for different voices, like children talking to each other? Sometimes this isn't something you can fake.
Yeah.
I feel like we're lucky to live in a world with so much technology. I think YouTube, I hate to say it, is a great resource. Look up videos of children talking. If you're trying to write from the voice of a professor, look up professors speaking about history or something really mundane. What types of vocabulary do they use? Where do they stress certain points? I think there's a lot that you can learn from just observing others, even if it has nothing to do with your character. Just someone who might embody that character in some fashion.
I think a fun exercise that you could do also is have each character say the same line, but how do they deliver it? So how do they greet someone? And how does anyone greet someone?
Right.
If it's a child, they'd be like, maybe it's a little bit more mommy or shy, or maybe they don't say anything. Maybe they don't look at you. If it's someone who's a little bit more confident, they look you in the eye. Do they say, what's up? Do they ask, how are you? How's everything go? Like, how's life? Do they even bother about asking who you are? Do they not? That's, I think there's like little exercises that you can do where every single person has the same moment. How do they handle that moment?
Right. Because you learn a lot from a character based on, I think of children, right? Pick a child and how do they greet someone they do know versus they don't know?
Yeah.
And what does that tell us about how they were brought up or how they value interpersonal dynamics? It's hard to describe.
Yeah, because when I write, I can hear my characters' voices so clearly, but I'm trying to think of characters that I don't hear clearly. Like, how do I clear them up?
Yeah, when it comes to that, I just think of people I know. Like, if I had to write from a child's voice, I think about my sisters when they were 5.
Yeah, yeah,
and how different each one was. Right now, I'm writing from the perspective of a 12-year-old boy who's a prince, and that one's hard. I think about 12-year-old boys when I was 12, and I'm like, ugh, they are not princely. So that's a hard one for me to navigate.
Yeah.
And I have no solution. I just keep trying.
Yeah, just keep doing, keep trying. I listen to music, songs that remind me of them, from their voice, from their point of view. Baby shark, toot. All right, this one. All of these are such good questions.
They are.
Because I feel them all. How do you push through the parts of your story that are boring but necessary? Good question.
Excellent question. Every person is different. And every boring part is different.
Yeah.
So I think a lot about like exposition. There are parts of my first draft where I was like, okay, you have to describe this port city. I have no idea what it looks like, so I'm just going to put a big yellow block right here that says, figure out how to describe this. And that's future me is going to have to figure that out. But if it's really boring, I do a couple different things. Sometimes I'll go back to a part that I really enjoyed writing or I really liked what I did and read that for motivation. Because usually that hypes me up. And it's like, okay, I can keep going. I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
Or I'll skip ahead and write the next scene if I think that that's more entertaining. The one other thing I do, if you have dialogue in the scene, sometimes I just write the dialogue stream of consciousness, and then I go back through and add the dialogue tags, and then add the exposition, and add the action, etc. Yeah. But sometimes it's just, I need a page of dialogue so that I know what's even happening.
Yeah, I guess I would say sometimes you just write it and accept that what you're writing is going to be horrible.
Fair.
You know what I mean? Like, you just do it, and then you say, all right, I did it. We'll fix that later. But I would say from this analysis with SJM in particular, since this is the first time I think we're, at least me personally, I'm analyzing a book that's similar to the type of book I'd want to write.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we can spot the times that she's not into it.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while there'll be a thing that will say, it really feels like she either pushed this, kind of rushed this, had to get from point A to C, just kind of breeze through B. So that being said, I feel like people can sniff it out if you don't like it, what you're writing. So how do you add something to like about it?
Yeah.
And I don't know what you're writing. I don't know if this applies at all, but I think going back to the character's senses, what do they see? What do they smell? What do they hear? What do they taste? Grounds the moment a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you can start to feel it. You can start to be there and imagine it. Do they smell the sea air? Can they taste ashes in their mouth? Like, what's going on? What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Then you're kind of grounding the moment, and then hopefully you can like it more.
Yeah. I also think about times when Sarah J. Maas uses weather.
Mm-hmm.
And that could come across as really boring exposition.
Yeah.
But there's layers to it.
Yep.
And oftentimes the weather reflects what's going on internally within Feyre. So if you're describing something boring, is it actually worth being on the page?
Yep.
Is it adding nuance, or is it adding layers to the story you're trying to tell? And if it isn't, then maybe that's something that you want to focus on. And maybe then it becomes more interesting and less boring for you.
I can't remember if we took this class together, but I remember one of my classes in college, the exercise was cut one scene from your story. Does it still make sense?
Was that Beth?
I think it might have been.
It might have been Beth.
Because it was a good lesson.
Yeah,
and it didn't
really
hurt.
good lesson.
But it was just one of those moments where if you can cut a scene from your book and nothing's changed, then it doesn't deserve to be. It should not be in there.
Yeah.
Even like to Amy's point, if it's describing the weather, but we know that actually is showing how Feyre is feeling and where she's at mentally, then yes, like you want to keep that in. But if what you're struggling to write, does it actually need to be there?
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Kind of it's not a similar question, but the hurt feels the same.
Yep. This is all painful, but I love it.
How do you finish a book without quitting? Excellent question. So having written a book, I will tell you that for me, I had to give myself deadlines. For a long time, I said, I am going to write a chapter every 10 days. Mm-hmm. And that's just what I did. And I got 16 chapters done in like 2 months. It was something crazy. Actually, it wasn't 2 months, but it was maybe 4 months. But regardless, sometimes it's just about just doing it. And for me, with the first draft, it was, I know I'm creating holes in the writing. I know there are plot points that are unresolved. I know I have to go back and fill in descriptions, but I want to get to this point and just push forward. And it can be hard. After the first 16 chapters, it definitely took me 2 more years to finish. Yeah. But for me, I set deadlines, and that's the only reason why I was able to finish my first draft.
It speaks to who you are as an individual. For me, the only book I've actually written and completed was back in college, but I was posting the chapters online and I was getting instant validation. And that's what kept me going. Yeah. I'm a words of affirmation person. So I kept being told, good job. And now that I'm writing my book and not posting it online and waiting, it's harder. It's a lot harder because you have no one rooting for you. You have no one telling you, you did a great job. I really like this chapter, and you have to keep going. Before we did the podcast, we had a very short stint of a writing group amongst our friends, and that was really helpful. Yeah. Then we started the podcast. And
now we have no time.
Now we got no time. But I don't know whether it's ritualistic where, you sit down, you listen to the same music. Amy, you did this to you Pavlovian dogged yourself.
Oh, yeah, I did.
And that was the most genius thing.
Yeah. So what I did is anytime I was writing, I listened to the same album on repeat. So now anytime I hear that album, I want to write.
Yeah. It's genius. It's genius.
Actually, I haven't listened to that album in a long time. I need to start playing it again.
Yeah.
Because
you're going to get itchy to write.
Yeah, because every time I hear it, I'm just like, oh, I feel so motivated.
And it's smart. It's such a smart idea. I need to pick an album and do that, which is hard because my story's so music driven sometimes. Yeah. But even if it's instrumental or something, but that's what I mean by ritualistic. There was another author, I remember listening to their interview, and they said something of, there is a race from when you sit down to when you start writing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to try to force yourself to cross that line to start writing faster. And what that means is you sit down, you look at your phone, go on TikTok, maybe check your emails. Is that a message I missed? Is that a text I got to write back?
I look at the split ends in my hair.
Yeah. And then this author described it as you just go through that faster. Yeah. And you create a little ritual for yourself. You sit down, you do something, you have your pattern, and then your body, your mind, and everything knows, okay, now it's time to start.
Yeah. And you have to train yourself. So what are you going to do to train yourself? So your body and your mind know this is when I'm writing. Yeah. Put your phone in a specific location. Yep. Maybe shake your arms, shake your legs to shake off the world.
Turn off your Wi-Fi.
Turn off your Wi-Fi. Or if you need to research, then assign time for researching versus writing. Yeah. Yeah, it's just about doing the thing.
It really is. It sucks. We get it. I think what's hard is you and I know the answers because we studied it. We know it. We've had the professionals tell us. We've done it ourselves. We've both written works and stuff. But at the same time, it doesn't make it easier. No, at all.
It doesn't get easier.
We know how we fail ourselves.
Yeah, constantly. Constantly. But yeah, I think you need to figure out what are your motivations and then figure out what are your rituals.
I will say that last year we interviewed one of my favorite authors, one of your favorite authors, S.B. Nova. Fan-freaking-tastic author. Highly recommend her work, A Kingdom of Exiles. Anyway, she told us about, it's not a platform, it's a tool that she uses to write her book and organize it. And it's called Scrivener. And I feel like that was a game changer for me on how I can visualize the outline of my book.
Yeah. And going back to what I was saying earlier, I created a wall of index cards where I organized every scene that I wanted or had written in my book. I'm now putting it into Scrivener. But anything that inspires you, something that Jack suggested for me was I created playlists for specific points of view. Every time I'm writing from a specific point of view, I listen to that playlist. And that's motivating.
It is. It is. All this to say is that find your passion in it.
Yeah.
And that's what will get you through it.
Yeah.
You know, like what you're writing.
Yeah.
And you'll want to finish it.
Yeah.
But it's still really hard because we love what we're writing, but it's so hard.
One last thing I would suggest before we move on. When I was reading a lot of fan fiction, I would take screenshots on my phone of paragraphs that I really, really enjoyed that I thought were really, really well written. And I would have a folder on my phone where I would go back and read those. And I do the same with my own writing, where I go back and read certain sections that I really thought I wrote well, because that's motivating to me.
On the flip side, whenever I read really bad pieces of writing, books and stuff that I wonder how it's published. That's also motivating.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I can read it and say, wait a minute, I can do this.
Yeah.
Which is hard to criticize authors that don't do a good job because they finished.
It's true.
Who am I to say that this book wasn't good?
Yeah.
How do you deal with imposter syndrome as a writer?
That is a really difficult question to answer.
Because how do you deal with imposter syndrome in life?
And this one's so hard because you're not always visible to other people as a writer, but you still feel like an imposter. And when you tell people, oh yeah, I'm writing a book, they think you're the most amazing thing on the planet, but you're like, whoa, this is not
Or
what
the
you think it is.
opposite, which I tend to get a lot, is I'm writing a book too. Or I'm doing it. Was it finished? Where is it?
Yeah.
People are either excited for you or hostile.
Yeah, it's
or
true.
like, I've done it too, or something like that. It's like it's a weird thing that when you tell someone that you're writing, how they react.
Right. Here's the thing, and I think I tell myself on a regular basis, I'm not writing for anybody else.
Yeah.
I'm writing because I love my characters. And whether anyone reads it or not, I want to do my characters justice. And nobody else can write my characters the way I want to write them.
It's true. I feel like this kind of goes back to what we were saying before with finishing a book. Sometimes I would get a little like tough on myself as calling myself an author, but having not finished my book yet. And that's really hard because you think you have to have done X, Y, and Z to be considered an author, but that's not true. You're writing, you're an author. Embrace that. It's a title that is so, I don't want to call it frivolous. It's a title that is just so like that anyone can have. Yeah. You're okay. Like, no one's going to crown you an author. People who are published, nothing makes them special of being an author. They wrote something. You're writing something.
Right.
That's it.
I have an analogy that I don't know that it works, but I'm going to say it anyway. I am a sister, but I live in a city away from all my siblings. I do not talk to my siblings regularly, but that is a part of my identity, just like writing is a part of my identity.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it all the time to be considered a writer.
Yeah.
It is something that I do. It is something that I'm passionate about, but I don't have to do it all the time to identify with it.
You don't have to read a book all the time. You don't have to write all the time. Being a writer and being an author, it's a spirit, it's a mindset. I mean, it's more than mindset, it's a soul set.
Yeah.
It's who you are. You are a writer or you're not. And what makes you a writer is that you want to write. That's it. And that you put pen to paper. Yeah. Even if what you put to paper is real rough and sometimes it's just a little sketch and you're not sure what's happening. But, like you have the people who want to write. So many of our listeners were interested in this episode, but so many of them aren't because they're not writers, and that's okay. Still hope you listen. At least, put it on mute, put it in the background. That's all that matters. But it's like the girls who get it. The ones who don't. But if that makes sense, I don't know. And then I think imposter syndrome gets better as you get older.
Yeah.
At least for me, but I also have been at my job for a while.
Yeah, I think.
So who am I?
What I learned as I got older was that I have a skill set that I think is applicable. And my skill set is applicable in project management and it's applicable in writing. It's applicable to the podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm confident in what I bring to the table. that doesn't mean I write the way SJM does. That doesn't mean I write like J.K. Rowling. It doesn't mean I write like people who are successful.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe I have something to offer.
Yeah. And I mean, and also, I feel like men don't have this as much as women do.
I agree.
I have no statistic to back this up, but at the same time, like, you know, you're feeling that because women have been made to doubt themselves our entire lives. Are you being too bossy? Are you being too sexual? Are you being too mean? Are you being too any of this? So, of course, we have imposter syndrome. Like, we've been told we're too much of this or too less of that. So, yeah, you're going to question your identity on this, but just remember, men ain't shit. And if they can do it, you can do it better.
I think also it's okay to question.
Yeah.
Questioning is part of everybody's process.
Yeah, you can question, but don't let anyone question you.
I love it. Yeah. Question yourself as much as you want. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I got.
Well, I hope someone got something out of this. I feel reinvigorated. I mean, there's a reason why we love to talk about this, because we love writing.
That's why it started. Amy and I were talking about this really amazing email that we received from a listener, and she talked about how this podcast has helped in other ways, and we're not here to pat ourselves on the back with it, but it's just Amy's response to that was, we started this because we just like talking about books and we wanted to be better with our writing. And that's literally how it all began, was just, let's talk about something we both love and let's hope it motivates us to write.
Yeah, exactly. The only goal I had when I started this was, I want to improve my writing. I want to write more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I achieved that, but do I think I will be a better writer because of this? Yes, I think so.
And I also feel like talking like this, and I feel like I'm talking to our listeners, even though they're not here in the room with us, but, you know, we're reading their questions and in my mind, we're speaking back. Not my mind, my mouth. We are in reality. But it really is like just talking about writing and loving it. It's definitely will I have time to write tonight type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's motivating. It's passion. I'm going to have to save this episode when it comes out and listen to it when I need a
boost.
Some juice. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks for listening.
And if you have more writing questions, send them to us. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah, keep them coming. And when in doubt, or just in general, please go back and listen to Amy read the first chapter of her book.
And Jac will be reading the first chapter of her book probably the week after this.
Oh my God. Yeah. So now that you've heard us be extremely critical and analytical, please be so very nice to us. Do as we preach, not as we do. Our last question is, what's the balance of taking writing criticism / direction whilst also staying true to your story?
Never has there been a harder question to answer. Even after years of writing, it's still so difficult for me to not take things personally.
Yeah. So I will say, for all the crap that we had to go through, and I don't agree with this method that in college we went through, but it taught me how to deal, was in college, our creative writing class, they would all go around and critique your writing, and you weren't allowed to say a single thing. And you couldn't defend it, and which I don't agree with, because you'd be able to say this was my attempt of what I was trying to do, and then people should workshop it. But it definitely taught me how to take some criticism.
Yeah, and I think what I learned from that process is when people are truly attacking you versus when people are trying to help what you're trying to achieve be better. And I think you have to disassociate from your own writing sometimes and be like, somebody else wrote this and I'm relaying the feedback to them.
Have a discussion about it too is really important, because you and I read each other's works all the time. We read our friends' stuff. Our friends read our stuff. And what is the most important thing is saying, this was what I was trying to do. So if someone comes to you and says, look, I don't know about this part, I feel like maybe it should change, then say like, okay, well, this is what I was attempting to do. And then you also have to accept that sometimes what you're attempting to do isn't working.
Yeah, it's true. I think that, to Jac's point, have a conversation about intention and execution. So if Jac says, this is what I'm trying to do, then I can be like, okay, from my point of view, from my perspective,
yeah,
I like that idea. Here's maybe some changes you could consider. And we know how to talk to each other about it because we've been doing this for a while.
It is so important to find people how to talk to you.
Yeah. Don't, because I'm guilty of this. don't kick away people's stuff. Don't kick away their feedback right away.
Okay.
Sorry. So don't have a knee-jerk reaction where you're like, nope, all your feedback is wrong. If you're not in a space to process it, write it down, come back to it when you are able to process it. And accept that sometimes you might not be achieving what you're wanting to achieve, but also if you have a gut instinct about something, then trust that gut instinct.
Yeah, there is a point where you have to say, I don't agree with what you're saying, reviewer, I'm going to go with my gut. Just know that going with your gut could mean you're making a mistake, but sometimes also trust the fact that you know what you want your story to do. I do have like a quick moment of, the whole point of Amy and I doing this whole podcast is so that we could be better at our own writing. And as you heard, Amy wrote her first chapter, and then I've read my first chapter for this podcast. I can't remember what order, if this comes out after this episode.
This comes before.
Okay, so you'll hear it next week, guys.
Yep.
But when I had Amy read it, you gave me a suggestion, and I said, okay, I hear you, but this is what I'm trying to achieve. And I referenced ACOTAR, and then you said, okay, but X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh shit, that was good.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah. Like,
you used our own analysis against me.
I did. I didn't mean to, but
no,
I did.
But that's the thing, but you weren't doing it against me. You're doing it to help me. And it was such a good point. It changed the way that I was looking at it. So listen to the feedback and make sure it always comes from a place of, I don't know. I don't understand what you're doing. I think if you phrase it in that sense, it helps a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, because at the end of the day, A, you're the writer. You need to feel passionate about what you're putting out in the world. But C, as a writer, you're trying to convey something to a reader. And if your reader doesn't understand it, then you need to work on it.
Writing is 20% writing, 80% revision. And you don't get to revision without review and criticism.
Yeah. And the more criticism you accept and learn to process, the thicker your skin will be and the easier it will be.
I love your the difference though. It's like you receive not criticism, but recommendations, and that your gut reaction is to want to kick it away, but then you have to stop. I get feedback and my instant reaction is to apologize.
And that's okay.
No, but it just but everyone has their thing where, sometimes I do get that defensive of no, I have a vision and I get that. But it just, what was it? The chapter you and Nicole reviewed, I was going through when you guys gave it to me. I'm like, you're so right. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry you had to read this.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, guys.
Yeah, everybody reacts differently. So whether you're giving or receiving criticism,
find your people.
Yeah, find the right people to work with on it, I think is really important.
They don't have to be your friends.
No, they don't have to be your friends. And you don't have to let people who are cruel with their criticism read your stuff.
Yeah. If friends are assholes, then
don't let them read it.
No. Luckily, we don't have that, but I'm sure there's people out there. But Great question. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform.
As we gear up for Season 3, where we will deep dive into A Court of Wings and Ruin, we will continue to share between-season thoughts, interviews, and exclusive content.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. My entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes per details.